So let's begin in 1 Peter 5:8, where it says, be sober, of sober spirit, be on your alert. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour. Satan is a 5-star diabolical genius. This guy has had practice for 6,000 years that we can pretty easily track. And so if we think we're going to get a step ahead of him, we're probably way out of our league. He is just awesome at what he does. Now, it's diabolically awesome, but sometimes you just got to back up and look at the competition and go, wow, that was pretty impressive. So he's got thousands of years of practice. He is very manipulative. And most people just gladly hop on board and follow right along. I don't know. I want to be a little snarky, not extremely so, but he says he's prowling around seeking someone to devour. I don't think he has to do much prowling. I think most of them are just out there, low fruit hanging on the tree, and all he's got to do is walk up and pick them. You know, now that, I hope that's not too snarky, but that's the way society looks and so much of it. So he has a lot of different tactics. He's got a lot of ways to do it. He's got a lot of bait in his tackle box. And so in 2 Peter 2:1, and this was one of our memory cards, but false prophets also arose among the people, just as there will also be false teachers among you, who will secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the master who bought them, bringing swift destruction on themselves. And we have a wide range there. They're going to secretly introduce destructive teaching. And that's going to always start pretty small. You know, we don't go from A and jump all the way to Z. The old timers always told us, and this is going back to the 60s when things were, I don't know what they were in the 60s, but anyway, they'd say, look, if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. If you open the gate a little bit, they're going to come flooding through. And they used to say, if you get them with hot dogs, you're going to have to keep them with hamburger, and later on, they're going to want steak and shrimp. And look, those of us who have been around long enough to see that progression, isn't it absolutely true? 100%. The old timers, as I politely call them, nailed it on the head. But it didn't go from A all the way to Z. It went from A, just one little step. Now we're at B. And Satan plays a long game. He was comfortable letting everybody get kind of settled in there. And then we just went over to C. And then after we settled in there, we went over to D. And you see how the progression goes. And now here we are some 50 years later after all those warnings. And we're in places we never ever thought we would be. We even have so-called churches of Christ dropping the name entirely and going to female pastors. Now in the 60s, had we said, look guys, y'all keep doing this stuff, you're going to end up with female preachers, folks would have looked at you and said, you are nuts. That will never ever happen in a million years. It did, didn't it? And it didn't take a million years, right? There were warnings against homosexuality. And they said, look, there are going to be gay preachers. Right, here in the South, are you kidding me? That'll never happen. Where are we at? In the South. Right? So that's the way Satan does it. He sneaks it in. He plays a long game. And so you really have to be aware of that long game. And then he can take you all the way to even denying the master. I had a couple of folks comment this morning on that Facebook post I did where the interviewer said to their guest, so you're a Christian? And the guest said, yes, I am. The interviewer said, so you believe in the Bible? The guest said, no, I don't. What? That's the nonsense that's out there. Absolutely. That's where we're at. And so Satan is he's played it out. Again, diabolical genius. Got to give him 5 stars, 10, whatever scale you want to use. And he slowly, gently twists the scriptures. And he is the ultimate false prophet. So Peter warned us there's going to be false prophets among you. There are going to be people trying to sneak in and get things off track. So I want to go back to the very original. This is Satan's attack on Eve. And we're going to start with the original instruction first, which preceded Eve. I don't want to unpack that right now. But when Adam gets the don't eat of the tree in the garden, Eve has not been created yet. The Lord God commanded the man, saying, from any tree of the garden you may eat freely. But from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat from it, you will surely die. Now, if you go on and read that text, it is after this part where Eve is actually created. And then we go to chapter 3 where we read the fall. So we have our original instruction. And what I want to point out to you is just the simplicity of this. But from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you shall not eat. Simple enough. In this particular text, we have 4 words that are our focus. You shall not eat. Anybody having trouble with that? Raise your hand. You shall not eat. Simple enough, right? Okay. So now Satan gets over here, and now he comes in to Eve, who's just one link later. And the serpent was more crafty than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, indeed, as God said, you shall not eat from any tree of the garden. Simple question? Is it a simple question? Is it just a harmless request for information? I'm going to tell you absolutely not. Satan knew exactly what he was doing. He knew the goal he wanted. He knew the outcome he wanted to achieve. And when he stated that question, when he asked it, he knew exactly what he was doing. He was setting the stage. He was starting to manipulate Eve right with that very question. Now, I don't think it stands out really good here. The word indeed, let me back up if I can. So he says, indeed, has God said you shall not eat from any tree of the garden? You go, okay, New American Standard, which is the closest, most accurate to the original that you can get in the English. Still, sometimes translations just don't carry, can I say, all the flavor? This is why I encourage you to have 2 or 3 or 4 Bibles that you like to cross-reference in the English, because translation is not an exact science. It is not 1 + 1 = 2. And if you really need to have a little discussion on that subject, let me encourage you to talk to J.L., because J.L. teaches Spanish out at the college, and he can tell you of some of the interesting peculiarities that happen when you're translating. That's why I'm getting ready to give you a couple other translations here, because I think indeed is just a little bland here. I just don't think it does what really is happening. So in the ESV, which is still way down on the real conservative end, it's bumping down there with New American Standard, but they went with, did God actually say you shall not eat of any tree in the garden? You get a little more flavor there than just indeed, right? And then if you come up to Young's literary translation, which is now getting close to 100 years old, it's still what I would call in the very conservative genre, he says it this way, is it true God hath said, you do not eat of every tree of the garden? And so now you're starting to get a little more of what I'm going to speculate, since it doesn't literally say it word for word, but the emotional tonality of what's going on in this conversation. It's not just a simple request for information. It's got a little bit of, a tone to it that makes you go, I don't know. So he's setting the stage. He's stirring some doubt. Did God really say that? Almost like it's unreasonable, right? Almost like, you got to be kidding me. That can't be true. Now, what did God say? Now, I don't have it up here to go back to it, but remember chapter 2? He just said, don't eat it. I think it was 4 words. I got it in 3. Don't eat it. I think you shall not eat of it. Anyway, so he's setting the stage, and he's also, here he's tapping into FOMO, fear of missing out. But you don't see it as obvious here. Now, you're going to see it very obvious in just a moment. Right now, it's almost like God set limits on you. He's keeping something from you. God actually said you shall not eat of any tree of the garden. And there's still some, there's some vagueness there that's like, And that's all Satan needs. What Satan needs, step 1, is just to get you to go, I wonder. And now you're in the game. Now, you may not be far in the game. I'll agree with that. But you're in the game. So Eve gives the answer. Again, New American Standard. The woman said to the serpent, from the fruit of the tree of the garden we may eat, but from the fruit of the tree which is in the middle of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat from it or touch it, or you will die. Now, right here we get into some speculation that we will never be able to settle. But if you go back to chapter 2, where God gave Adam the direction, you do not read, you shall not eat of it or touch it. Eve, for reasons we don't know, adds or touch it. This is her response. Now, this is where we go, I'm not sure what's going on there. Adam got the command originally. My opinion is Adam was just being protective and going, look, you don't even look at that tree, don't even look at it, and he's just protecting his woman. I don't know that. I'm just speculating. Some of the speculation is that this gives us an insight into Eve's frustration. And that can be Kylan Delich and some old timers that I like to reference, and that she's kind of got a tone of disdain about her. Now, this is your call. There is no way to nail this one down and go, okay, why does Eve say it this way? And back in chapter 2, we have it this way. I don't know. We don't have that direct statement that we'd like, but we do know that she has all the information she needs. You shall not eat from it or touch it or you will die. I want to know, why didn't she just look at the devil and go, no, not having this conversation, and leave? But she didn't, did she? And we all know the fuller story. Why are they near the tree? Why are they hanging out there? Why is this the place for the conversation? What's her tone? What is her body language? Is she frustrated? Is she bored? Is she just really crazy, naive, and simplistic? And you're just going to have to fill those blanks in for yourself because, again, we don't have the scriptural background to do it, but you know there's something going on. Unless you want to imagine Eve as a total robot, which obviously isn't going to work. And so Satan, he's no dummy. So I pose the question, did he sense an opportunity here? Absolutely, he sensed an opportunity here. He read the situation. Now, what did he see? I don't know. But I don't think this is like his 4,862nd try. He's looking at it. He's not anybody to mess with, and he sees some timing here. So now he's set the stage a little bit. He's seen some things that he likes, and he moves forward. And the serpent said to the woman, you surely will not die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be open, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Now, is this a bold jump, or is this a logical move? I think this is a logical move. However, though, you could make a case for a bold jump because bold lies are more believable. You know, I realize that in our crowd here, you're like, no, nobody would ever do this. But let me give you an example. How many of you got the email or the text back in the day when email was kind of new? And it was like, I'm so-and-so from Southern Africa, and I have this $842 million estate, and I need to put $10 million in your account for security reasons. Click here. Who in their dumbest day would ever click there? But guess what? People did it. Just give me your account number. And there it is. They click. Maybe that's what Satan's doing. Let me just give her this really bold lie. If she bites this one, incidentally, that's the psychology behind it. If some millionaire pulls your name out of the air and you're naive enough to click on it, you pass the first sifting process. You've been vetted already. Here's somebody who's a good target. You may not go all the way through, but, you know. A logical progression. Now, in my mind, it's logical progression because he's been setting up some things and he knows what he's seen, and he's read some things in body language and tonality that we don't have privy to. And then I'm kind of curious about his own tone and body language. I think he's condescending. I think the whole time it's kind of like that tonality that says, trust me, look, it's okay. I know what I'm doing. Now, I don't think he said that verbatim. Don't misunderstand me. But when he said, you surely will not die, I don't think it was a robotic voice. I think it had that tone that said, hey, it's going to be okay. I got this. Just trust me. We're going to go get someplace neat. So now he's really tapping in on the FOMO. And that's so really clear in verse 5. So previously he said, you don't get every tree. Okay, you got limits on me. We're already talking about the fence. And now verse 5, God knows in the day that you eat from it, your eyes will be open. And you will be like God. He's holding out on you. He's not giving you everything. I know a way for you to get some more than what you have. And of course, mankind, I think, nothing new under the sun, always looking for that something new, right? They weren't happy. Let me refer back to an old sermon, just really briefly. They weren't happy with the manna he provided. They got bored with the manna in the garden, figuratively speaking, and now they want something new. And so he taps in on the FOMO big time. And Eve, though, and now here's the simplicity of it, she knew everything she needed to know. Everything she needed to know. Right in those words that she stated, and in chapter 2 it's 4 words. When she repeats it, I have 5 words here. You shall not eat from it. 6 words. And those 6 words, that's it. knew every single thing she needed to know about the tree and the devil, all right there. She didn't need to know anything else. Are we curious about other things? Sure, I'm curious about other things. But as far as being obedient, loyal to God, that's everything she needed to know. I would suggest to you that often this is the way the Bible works. It is just right there, point blank, really, really simple, and then we do just exactly what Eve did. We have this really simple instruction, and then we get stirred up. We're going to give some examples, but so we have a really simple one, and we go, yeah, but I wonder if that's really what that means. And I might be missing out on a this or a that. And she took the yes, but, what if bait. And when you take the yes, but, what if bait, if you don't spit it out pretty quick, you lose the game. Now, it's possible to spit it out, but most people don't. Most people, once they bite, that treble hook gets in there and they are stuck and they're going all the way. Let me get my clicker to work here. So let's use a little modern example. So first off, Satan is still doing the exact same thing today. He has not really changed his strategy. Why would he? It works so crazy good. But I'm afraid that as the serpent deceived Eve by his craftiness, your minds will be led astray from the simplicity and purity of devotion to Christ. That's 2 Corinthians 11:13. Again, that word simplicity is not the way that we use it, and actually it can be a tad misleading. So let's add the ESV to it. ESV in 2 Corinthians 11:13 says, but I'm afraid as the serpent deceived Eve. Okay, those two statements are exactly the same, the top line. By his cunning, a little bit of difference there, your thoughts will be led astray. I kind of like that a little better myself. But look, led astray from a sincere and pure devotion to Christ. That simplicity, that's more accurate translation that technically, but the idea is that sincerity, that purity of heart. And what Paul was worried about, concerned about, is that just like the serpent deceived Eve, these people, and you know the the Corinthian story, you understand, they were having some struggles. So he uses the exact same tactics today, and so he brings in his false teachers, and they look wonderful. For such men are false apostles, deceitful workers, disguising themselves as apostles of Christ. No wonder, for even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. Therefore, it is not surprising if his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness, whose end will be according to their deeds. That's 2 Corinthians 11:13, and follow down through verse 15. But now, do you catch what's going on, or is it a little like, I'm not sure? His servants, false prophets, right? So 2 Peter 2:1 said, there will be false prophets among you. So if somebody came into our congregation waving the banner of immorality back and forth, just, bold and blatant, and said, we're going to bring weed into the Lord's Supper, and we're going to put women in the pulpit, and make that just bold jump, how long would they stay? Please tell me not a minute, right? Ain't happening. But what happens is they don't come in abrasive and crude and rude. They come in and they capture your heart. And it feels like your grandpa. It feels like your closest loved person ever, whether it's an aunt or an uncle or a mother or a father. And they disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. And you've heard, I'm sure you had your friends say it to you. Well, brother so-and-so is one of the sweetest, kindest, most compassionate, caring ministers, reverends, pastors, whatever I have ever met. He wouldn't teach me anything wrong. I know he wouldn't. I don't know. What do the servants of the devil do? They disguise themselves as ministers of righteousness, whose end will be according to their deeds. You can't look at the preacher. You can't look at the person speaking. Now, I know that you and I have this concept of Satan talking to Eve, and he's a big boa constrictor or python wrapped around a branch. That's not true. Think about it a second. What was his punishment? From this day forward, you will do what? Go about on your belly and eat the dust of the earth. What was he before that? We don't know. There's a lot of speculation. But he wasn't a boa constrictor wrapped around the proverbial apple tree. You know, it was something else. Something Eve was comfortable talking to and being around and not instinctively afraid of, as we are of snakes and reptiles and that type of thing. So my point is, you have to quit looking at the preacher. I don't care what the preacher looks like. I don't care if you like him, don't like him. He is irrelevant. Whoever is teaching you the word, your Bible class teacher, she's irrelevant. You've got to look at the word. That's where Eve missed it, right? She had the word, you shall not eat of it. But Satan managed to distract her from the word. And I'm going to take you back to the word all I can. Psalms 119, 105. Your word is a lamp to my feet, a light to my path. And John 12:48 needs to be right there. The one who rejects me and does not receive my words has a judge. The words that I have spoken will judge him in the last day. It is back to the book. So why did Eve fail? Well, she took that yes, but what if bait. She took her, now again, she had the word. You shall not eat of it. Did he really mean that? And all of a sudden she's, Well, you know, language is flexible, isn't it? I guess it was even back then. Back then they only had the one. You got to get to the Tower of Babel before we get all the world. So we don't wish anybody any harm. This is one of the places you and I need to be so careful. This is really, I don't know how to put it into words. You have to speak the truth. You have to speak in love. I'll have that up here in just a moment. But you can't come across as hateful. And that's tricky. I'll give you that. So I have put Eve now in quotation marks because now I'm going to use Eve as representing sinners. Does pretending that Eve is okay make Eve okay? Obviously not. They're all still in trouble. Does being angry at Eve's critics make her okay? Because, see, this is one of the things. We speak the truth and we point to a group of behavior alcoholics, and all of a sudden we're the bad guys because we're criticizing. So when people are angry at us for speaking against alcohol, does that make the alcoholic okay? Does that cure his problems? Does that make him right with God? You know, Paul said pretty clear, be not drunk. But if let's say this is the nonsense we're up against. So love and honesty can be a tricky balance, and we really, you need to tiptoe into that one as best you can, but you still have to go forward. So let's talk about the LGBT movement for just a second. Let's imagine that at Sodom and Gomorrah there had been an LGBT movement, and that Sodom and Gomorrah's LGBT movement had been so effective that everybody was kind and considerate and tolerant, and they just looked at that community with humble compassion in their heart. Would God have stopped? Would that have saved the gay community in Sodom and Gomorrah? You see, we can write any law we want, but God works by His law. Now, I still want you to speak the truth in love, but what I'm trying to say is we can do all the political correctness stuff we want. And I do think you need to be kind to people. Look, I do think we have a double standard. I really do. I think we'd be like, oh, them gays, that's horrible stuff. Now, the reason I can't do my daily Bible reading is, well, I know it said, study to show yourself approved, work and be not be ashamed before God, rightly dividing the word, but you don't understand. I got things to do. And we start playing the double standard game. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness. Present your body a living sacrifice. Yeah, I know, preacher, but. I got other stuff to do first. And those people are going to hell. Those people are going to hell just as much as the gay is going to hell. Okay? We have a double standard. We got to be careful about that. So we could have been totally politically correct, 100% politically correct in Sodom and Gomorrah, and nobody ever said a bad, derogatory, negative, criticizing, questioning word about the gay community, and God would have still rained hell and fire and brimstone down on them. because it violated his law. That's the only word you need. What did God say? God said, don't eat of it. End of story. That's all I needed. Don't touch that fruit. Don't need me to hang out. Okay, maybe I got to go weed eat it around a little bit since I'm keeping the garden, but I don't need to hang out in that part of the thing. Now, again, the trick is to speak the love and truth. Now, here's where it gets so, I don't know. You can't do it. You can from your side. How about from their side? Have you noticed the smallest, tiniest criticism sometime, the smallest, tiniest piece of advice? Hey, have you ever thought about just making this one change? And all of a sudden people bow up and blow up because they feel rejected and pushed away. And all you did was offer a piece of constructive advice that they're smart enough to see. See, this is why I say it's tricky. People, let me try to use the cliff analogy. They are so much on the edge of the cliff, and this is 10,000 feet down here, and they're wobbling the whole time. And you say one little word, one little corrective, and it feels like you just came up and tried to do this. And they're scared to death. And it's crazy. Instruction. Rebukes. Admonitions. It's what we do. It's what we do in school. My teachers did it. Back in my day, my teachers did it a little more bluntly than they're allowed to do it nowadays, but it's what they do. You get into sports, what's a coach do? Gives you correction, right? And some of the coaches are a little more energetic about it, aren't they? If you follow my drift, they're a little more energetic about it. You know, you get into anything and you're going to get corrected. And so speaking the truth in love, especially when we get into sensitive issues, can be really difficult. But either way, Eve is still wrong. And Adam's cooperation did not make Eve right. Sin is sin. End of story. Now, our treatment needs to be speaking the truth in love, but how we decide to treat a sinner does not change a sinner in God's eyes. So false prophets, they simply deny the word of God. Do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God? Do not be deceived. Neither fornicators, idolaters, adulterers, effeminate, homosexuals. Now, I pointed out the sexual sins here. We could do lessons on the others sometime. But what Satan does is he comes along just like Eve. Well, did God really say adultery is bad? You know, what if? Whoops, now you see what happened? Did God really say adultery is a sin? What if? Or homosexuality, of course, we won't beat that one anymore. Look, don't back to what if, the yes but. Don't take the bait. God said it's wrong, it's wrong. And that's where we need to learn to stand. So did he really say divorce and remarriage is a sin? Did he really say that? Now, this is Satan playing. Look, here's what I have in the Bible. You know, this is the don't eat it passage. And I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for immorality and marries another woman commits adultery. I always like verse 10. The disciple said to him, if this is the relationship of a man with his wife, it's better not to get married. Look what they understood. That Jesus said, look, when you say, better, worse, sickness, health, rich or poor, till death do we part, Jesus meant till death do you part, or that one clause, the immorality, the adultery clause, and that's it. And the apostles saw that and go, woo, I ain't getting married then, you know. And they start, but Satan comes along and changes. He says, you know, as long as you're married, it's not adultery, is it? Do you know I have actually had that question asked in a Bible class in a church auditorium talking about marriage, divorce, and remarriage. The person, I don't think they were being malicious or anything. They go, but if you're married, it can't be adultery, can it? What did Jesus say? And hangs out with another commits adultery. Is that what Jesus said? And sleeps around with another. It's adultery. Is that what Jesus said? What did Jesus say? What are you reading with your own eyes? Assuming you can see the script up here, Matthew 19:9. And marries another commits adultery. But Satan goes, you think that's really what he meant? And now it's the yes, but what if game. And Satan starts winning that way. Did he say you really got to obey? Not everyone says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but who does the will of my Father in heaven? And then Satan comes along and goes, yeah, but maybe not. And then he starts tapping into FOMO because there's all that stuff out in the world that we want to get. And then Eve takes the what if, yes, but bait, and we're in trouble. Now, if Eve is smart enough to resist a little bit, then we get Ephesians 2:8-9. By grace you have been saved through faith, not of yourselves, as a gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. And Satan goes, see, look at him. You don't even have to obey. Now, Jesus just said you got to obey, but, Satan's playing this game. But there is a little problem here. We call it the Great Commission. Great Command would be a better phrase. Who has all authority? Jesus, right? He says, go baptize them. Who has all authority? Jesus. The one that has all authority says, go baptize them. And then he says, teach them to observe all I've commanded you. And lo, I'm with you always to the end of the ages. Now, did Paul outrank Jesus? Are Paul and Jesus in conflict with one another? This is a whole other lesson, so we can't go there. Look, Paul and Jesus agree 100%. Satan is twisting a passage to make it look like it annuls the teaching of Jesus. And this is the things you have to watch out for. Christ said, I know your deeds, that you're neither cold nor hot. I wish you were cold or hot, so because you're lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spit you out of my mouth. Did he really say he would spit you out? Yes, he really said that. But some people don't like the obedience thing. They like this faith-only, grace-only thing, and they can't hear that. I mean, they can see it, but that's not what that means. It doesn't mean you're going to lose your salvation. I mean, yeah, Christ rejected you, but you still get into heaven somehow. And it gets really pretty convoluted. So what happens is the Eves of our day, they take the yes, but, what if bait, and they miss the simple word. Back to Eve in the garden. She knew everything she needed to know. You shall not eat of it. But she took the bait. And then she bit, right? So why does Eve take the bait? Because she wanted to. She absolutely wanted it. This is the way she thought it ought to work. And so she took the bait and ran with it. And it didn't work, did it? That's the sad thing. So what's the point? We'll wrap up right here. This is the whole point. But false prophets also arose among the people, just as there will be also false teachers among you, who will secretly introduce destructive heresies, even denying the master who bought them, bringing swift destruction upon themselves. Just as much as Israel had to deal with false prophets, you and I have to deal with false prophets. And the simple trick for dealing with false prophets is just this. Read the book. Right there. Just read the book and see the word and then do what the word said. If Eve had followed that simple strategy in the garden, I don't know what would have happened. But if she had looked at Satan and said, no, it says you shall not eat of it. End of story, get out of here, I'm done. We'd have had a different outcome. But what happened? Eve didn't read the book, did she? I mean, she knew it. She had it in her mind. She had everything she needed in those 6 words. But she wasn't happy with the man of God and wanted something different. What's our problem today? We've got everything we need in the book, but we're not entertained with the book. And so we got to tweak it here and there. Some tweak it a little, some tweak it a lot. But they're not happy with what God put in the book. They're not happy with his manna. Watch out for the false prophets. Get back to the book. Learn the book, cover to cover. Read it again and again and again and again until you're comfortable with the whole flow of it. If you're subject to our public invitation, let us help however we can while together we stand and sing.